Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. Today we're doing a really special deep dive into something that I think is going to challenge how you process loss. And I want to start by just asking you to think about your own home right now.
Yeah, everybody has that one spot.
Right. Have you ever noticed how the keepsakes we hand out at funerals, like the laminated prayer cards, the little folded paper programs, the ribbons with the gold foil lettering, they're essentially designed to just sit in a drawer and gather dust?
They really are.
I mean, think about the glove box of your car, or, the back of your desk drawer, or that one box on the top shelf of your closet.
Yep.
You probably have a piece of cardstock sitting in there right now with a picture of someone you loved. And the thing is, you don't look at it every day. You don't interact with it.
No, of course not.
But throwing it away feels like this profound betrayal, right? Like a literal discarding of their memory.
Oh, absolutely. The guilt is real.
It's massive. But keeping it just feels, I don't know, hollow. It just sits there, static, unchanging. So for today's deep dive, we're looking at documents detailing the offerings and really the underlying philosophy behind the funeral program site, specifically their memorial seed packets.
Right, which is such a fascinating pivot.
It is. Our mission today is to explore this profound shift in modern memorialization. We're moving away from those static, disposable objects that end up in the junk drawer and towards something entirely different. Sustainable, living tributes.
It's a total reimagining.
Exactly. We are going to unpack the environmental, the emotional, and the psychological benefits of literally planting your grief into the soil and watching it bloom.
And it's so needed because it's such a universal experience, that drawer full of laminated cards. I mean, we've spent generations constructing these very rigid, static monuments out of paper and plastic.
Yeah.
And in a psychological sense, we're essentially trying to freeze a moment of acute grief.
Like capturing a snapshot of the ending.
Exactly. We capture the ending, we print it on heavy stock paper, and then we hide it away because we fundamentally lack the tools to interact with it on a daily basis.
Right.
Those objects demand absolutely nothing of us. They don't need to be watered, they don't need sunlight, and in return for that lack of required care, they offer very little ongoing comfort.
They're just passive artifacts.
Yes, passive artifacts of an incredibly painful event. So what we're seeing now, and what these memorial seed packets from the source material represent, isn't just a slight aesthetic upgrade in how we plan a funeral service. It's a fundamental psychological pivot in how we process loss.
And that transition from passive observation to active caretaking is, well, that's where I really want to start. Because when you look at traditional funeral practices, they are overwhelmingly passive for the people attending.
Oh, completely.
You sit in a pew, you listen to a eulogy, you stand by a grave, you watch a casket being lowered. You are entirely at the mercy of the event.
You're just receiving the experience. You aren't participating in it.
Right. And even the physical objects around you reinforce that helplessness. Take the floral arrangements, for example.
Oh, the massive funeral spray.
Yes. You walk into a funeral home and you see these intricate, incredibly expensive floral sprays standing on wire easels.
Which are gorgeous.
They're beautiful for about 48 hours.
Yeah.
But everyone in that room knows exactly what's going to happen to them. They're going to wilt, turn brown, and be thrown into a dumpster behind the funeral home by the end of the week.
It's almost tragic in a way.
It feels like a secondary loss. You're watching something beautiful die right in front of you while you're already mourning a death. But handing someone a packet of seeds completely rewrites that script.
It does.
You aren't giving them something that is dying, you're giving them something that is waiting to live.
And the mechanism behind that shift is rooted deeply in the psychology of trauma and recovery.
How so?
Well, grief, by its very nature, is a deeply disempowering experience. It's an event that happens to you regardless of your wishes. You can't stop the loss, you can't control the timeline.
You're just along for the ride.
Exactly. And that lack of control leaves mourners feeling adrift and, frankly, entirely helpless.
No.
So when we look at therapeutic interventions for trauma, one of the most effective tools we have is grounding.
Okay, grounding, like bringing you back to the present.
Yes. Grounding exercises force the brain out of the spiraling, abstract anxiety of the future, and they pull it away from the painful rumination on the past. They lock it firmly into the present physical moment.
Right.
The traditional funeral favor, the printed card, keeps you locked in the past. It's a historical document of an ending.
While the seed packet forces you into the present, I like to think of it like punctuation.
Oh, I like that. How do you mean?
Well, If I hand you a printed memorial card with a birth date and a death date, I'm giving you a full stop. It's a period at the end of a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
But a garden is a comma, or, it's ongoing thought. It actively demands your daily interaction. You can't just put a garden in a drawer.
No, you really can't.
You have to physically walk outside, check the moisture of the soil, make sure it has adequate sunlight, pull the weeds, water it. It requires you to show up tomorrow and the day after that.
And that physical requirement is the grounding mechanism at work. Think about the tactile experience of planting.
Yeah.
You have to tear open the paper. You pour the seeds into your palm. You can actually feel their texture, their weight. You press your bare hands into the dirt.
Getting your hands literally dirty.
Exactly. You feel the temperature of the soil, the moisture of the water. You are engaging your sensory nervous system in a highly specific, very deliberate way. Neurologically, this disrupts the anxiety loops that so often accompany grief.
Wow.
Furthermore, you're witnessing a biological process that mirrors the emotional journey you're desperately trying to navigate.
Right, because early grief is so invisible to everyone else.
It is. You're placing something tiny and dormant into the dark earth. For days or even weeks, you see absolutely nothing.
Just dirt.
Just dirt. The work is happening underground, out of sight, much like the internal, invisible work of early grief.
That is such a powerful image.
And then, the seed casing breaks, the sprout pushes through the soil. You are literally witnessing life emerge from darkness. It shifts the mourner's cognitive focus from finality, from those cold, unyielding facts of death, to the warmth and the natural, ongoing cycles of transformation and renewal.
It gives you a routine when your entire routine has just been shattered by loss. But, and this is where I want to pivot a bit. I want to dig into the actual physical object of the packet itself.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Because this is where things get kind of complicated for me. We aren't talking about handing out a generic brown paper envelope of seeds that you just grabbed off a rack at the local hardware store.
No, not at all.
The offerings from the funeral program site, according to the documents, are incredibly elaborate. They are highly designed.
Yes, the level of personalization they highlight is extensive. Families are able to customize these packets with high-resolution photographs of the person they lost. They can print their full names, specific dates, meaningful poems, scriptures, elegant custom artwork. The exterior envelope is treated with the exact same reverence and attention to detail as a traditional high-end funeral program.
It's like a bespoke artifact.
Exactly. You're creating a highly personal keepsake.
And I see why that matters, right? In the context of wanting to honor someone's specific personality, if your grandmother was deeply devout and loved a specific scripture, it's right there on the packet. If your best friend was an avid hiker who loved a poem about the mountains, it's printed right there alongside their smiling photo. You're matching the aesthetic to the authentic reality of the person.
Yes, which brings a lot of comfort.
But wait, I'm stuck on something here. I have a real problem with the mechanics of this.
Okay, what's the hang-up?
Well, we're talking about spending time, energy, and money to design a beautiful, highly personalized packet featuring the smiling face of the person you just lost.
Right.
But the entire functional purpose of this packet is to be torn open and destroyed so you can get to the seeds inside. Aren't we just asking grieving people to rip up a picture of their dead loved one? Doesn't that feel, I don't know, incredibly counterintuitive? It feels almost violent, honestly, to ask a mourner to tear a beautiful photo of their mother in half just to plant some daisies.
It is a profound tension, and you're right to point it out because it strikes at the very core of how ritual objects function in human society. To understand why this isn't a contradiction, we really have to look at the work of psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott.
Okay, Winnicott.
Yes. He introduced the concept of the transitional object. Now, we usually think of transitional objects in childhood, right? The security blanket, the favorite teddy bear.
Right, the thing you carry everywhere.
Exactly. These objects help a child navigate the terrifying transition between their internal world and the external reality.
Okay, so how does that apply to adults at a funeral?
Well, in adulthood, particularly in the landscape of acute grief, we still rely heavily on transitional objects. When you walk into a funeral home, you are entering a liminal space.
Liminal meaning like an in-between space.
Yes, exactly. It's often a sterile, highly unnatural environment. In that specific moment during the service or at the memorial luncheon, the communal grief is at its absolute peak.
Right. You're surrounded by people, but you feel completely alone.
You feel totally unmoored, And you need something to physically hold on to.
I see where you're going.
The elegant, customized exterior of the seed packet serves its primary function in that specific room. It acts as the physical embodiment of the memory in a sterile space.
Oh, okay.
When a guest is handed that packet, they look at the photograph, they trace the letters of the name with their thumb, they read the poem, and they feel a rush of specific memory and connection.
Grounds them in the room.
It validates the unique identity of the person they're mourning. It is a focal point for their immediate sorrow. But, and this is the crucial distinction, it is not meant to be permanent.
Right.
When the mourner takes that packet home and they eventually decide to open it, that act of tearing the paper is not an act of destruction. It is a ritual of release.
A ritual of release.
Yes.
So the temporary nature of the beautiful packet isn't a flaw in the design. It's the entire point of the exercise.
It is the entire point. Think about the psychology of hoarding.
Okay.
When we hoard physical items belonging to someone who has died, keeping their room exactly as it was, refusing to throw away a single piece of paper, we are often trapped in a state of complicated grief.
We're basically freezing time.
Exactly. We're refusing to let the energy of that person move forward. The seed packet demands that you let go. You are taking the spirit, represented by the customized exterior, and you are literally breaking it open to carry it forward into the future through the seeds.
That is so profound.
It's a physical, kinetic lesson that memory isn't meant to be hoarded in a pristine paper envelope in a dark drawer. It's meant to be released into the world so it can grow and change form.
That is an incredibly powerful way to reframe it. The tearing of the paper isn't violent, it's necessary. It reminds me actually of the creation of Tibetan sand mandalas.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. The monks will spend weeks, sometimes months, meticulously pouring millions of grains of colored sand into these impossibly beautiful, incredibly complex geometric designs. And the moment it's finished, the moment it reaches its absolute peak beauty, they just sweep it all away into a pile and pour it into a river.
Yes.
The destruction is the lesson. It symbolizes the impermanence of all physical things. So the beauty of the seed packet is exactly what makes the act of breaking it open and planting it so meaningful. You're acknowledging that the physical form is gone, but the energy continues.
Exactly. You're participating in the continuation.
And speaking of that continuing energy, I want to look at the physical world these seeds are being released into. Because the funeral program site documents lean heavily into the environmental stewardship aspect of this practice.
They do, and it's a vital part of the conversation.
Yeah, this isn't just about human psychology. It is about local ecology.
We really cannot ignore the ecological reality of modern death care. There is a rapidly growing awareness of the environmental toll of traditional funeral practices.
It's staggering when you actually look at the numbers.
It is. When we look at standard burials in North America, we're talking about millions of gallons of embalming fluids, which contain formaldehyde and other highly toxic chemicals being placed into the ground every single year.
Just buried in the earth.
Exactly. And we're talking about millions of tons of concrete used for burial vaults and massive amounts of hardwoods and metals for caskets that will never biodegrade.
Right.
Even traditional cremation, which is often viewed as a greener alternative, has a significant carbon footprint due to the energy required and the emissions released.
So people are looking for alternatives.
Right.
Yeah.
As families become more hyper-aware of climate change and environmental degradation, they are actively seeking out ways to minimize their final impact on the earth.
The phrase that kept jumping out at me when looking at the sources was positive environmental legacy.
Yes.
It's such a fascinating inversion of how we usually think about dying. Usually we think about what we're leaving behind in terms of, money or property or a static gravestone.
Tangible assets or markers.
Yes, exactly. But people are now actively pre-planning their own services and explicitly requesting these eco-friendly seed packets because they want their final act on Earth to be a contribution, not a deduction.
Right.
It's like leaving a living fingerprint on the Earth. Instead of leaving behind a piece of laminated cardstock that will just sit in a landfill for 500 years, bleeding microplastics into the soil, the person's final footprint actively feeds and sustains the local ecosystem.
And the biology of how that legacy functions is deeply compelling. We aren't just talking about planting something that looks pretty in a window box.
Right, there's utility to it.
Yes, the seeds utilized in these memorial packets are chosen specifically for their ecological utility. When they germinate and bloom, they actively attract and support the local biosphere.
Who are we talking about here?
We're talking about drawing in essential pollinators, butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, and various native insect populations. In many urban and suburban environments, these pollinators are facing severe habitat loss. By planting a memorial garden, you're creating a microhabitat. You're providing crucial nectar and pollen resources that they desperately need.
It is the ultimate butterfly effect. And I mean that quite literally.
Literally.
You lose someone you love. It's a devastating, isolating event. But then you take this packet, you break it open, and you plant the seeds in your backyard. A flower grows. A worker bee finds that flower, harvests the nectar, and takes it back to the hive. That nectar sustains the colony.
And then what does the colony do?
Right. That colony, in turn, pollinates the local community garden down the street, which produces the vegetables that feed a family in your neighborhood.
The connection's just spiderweb outward.
Exactly. The memory of your loved one is no longer just a thought in your head. It is physically woven into the local food chain. It's a biological participant in the survival of your local environment.
And that biological participation addresses one of the most painful aspects of grief. The profound sense of isolation.
Oh.
When you lose someone, the world just keeps spinning, people keep going to work, traffic keeps moving, but you feel entirely cut off from the flow of normal life.
Like you're watching everything from behind a pane of glass.
That's exactly how it feels. But by creating a living memorial that actively feeds a hummingbird or sustains a bee population, you're forced to step outside of that isolation and recognize interconnectedness.
You're part of the system again.
Yes. You're physically reminded that life is a vast, intricately woven web. The person you loved has passed from their human form, yes. But the energy of their memory, the literal act of remembering them, is now directly contributing to the continuation of other life forms.
That's beautiful.
It offers an incredible psychological comfort to see that your profound loss has directly facilitated new life.
Okay, so if the goal is to facilitate new life and support the ecosystem, the actual biology of what we are planting becomes incredibly important, right?
Extremely important.
Because you can't just throw any random seed into the dirt and expect a thriving microhabitat. We need to talk about the botany here.
Let's do it.
The documents from the funeral program site are quite specific about the types of seeds that are most effective for these living tributes. They focus heavily on common wildflower varieties. And when you look at the mechanics of a wildflower seed, it's honestly a masterclass in resilience.
Oh, wildflowers are the exceptional choice here. And it comes down to both extreme biological pragmatism and deep symbolic resonance.
Let's start with the practical side.
From a purely practical standpoint, wildflower seeds possess an incredible adaptive capacity. They are evolved to thrive in poor soil conditions, to withstand periods of drought, and to germinate without massive amounts of synthetic fertilizers or expert horticultural care.
Basically, they're foolproof.
Very close to it. And this is a crucial feature because of the logistics of a modern funeral. You might have guests traveling from entirely different climates to attend a service in Chicago.
Yeah.
One guest might live in the arid environment of Arizona, while another lives in the humid climate of Florida. They need to be able to take that single packet of seeds, travel home, and successfully grow a memorial garden in their own native soil.
Right. If you hand out an incredibly delicate, temperamental seed, like, I don't know, some exotic hybrid orchid, you're essentially setting the mourner up for failure.
Absolutely.
And if the seed fails to grow, if it just rots in the soil, that could trigger a massive secondary wave of grief. The person might feel like they failed their loved one, like they couldn't even keep the memory alive.
The guilt would be terrible.
So the rugged hardiness of the wildflower isn't just a biological trait. It is a necessary emotional safety net for the grieving person.
That's a great way to put it.
And the specific species often used in these packets are fascinating. The text specifically highlights forget-me-nots, lavender, daisies, and sunflowers. And when I look at that list, what strikes me is the massive aesthetic and energetic differences between them.
The variance in their physical presence is exactly what makes them such powerful tools for personalization. You are essentially curating the aesthetic of the memory.
Okay, break that down for me.
Let's look at the botany and the symbolism of each. Take the forget-me-not, scientifically known as myosotis.
Right.
It's a low-growing plant, very subtle, producing these tiny, delicate, usually blue flowers. Historically and culturally, it has been associated with enduring love and a quiet, persistent plea against forgetting.
The name says it all.
Exactly. And it doesn't demand attention. It grows close to the earth, creating a soft carpet of color. It's perfectly suited to commemorate a gentle, perhaps more introverted soul, someone who is a quiet, steady presence in your life.
It's intimate. You
Yeah.
have to physically get close to the ground to really appreciate a forget-me-not.
Yes.
And then you contrast that with something like lavender. Lavender is entirely different because it engages a completely different sensory pathway.
Yes. Lavandula brings a powerful olfactory dimension to the memorial. Right. Our olfactory bulb has a direct neurological pathway to the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain. Scent is tied to memory more strongly than any other sense.
Which is why a certain perfume can just stop you in your tracks.
Exactly. But beyond just triggering memories, the scent of lavender contains specific chemical compounds, like linalool, which have been scientifically shown to produce anxiolytic or anxiety-reducing effects.
Wait, really?
Yes. So for the mourner who is tending to this plant, the simple act of brushing against the leaves releases a scent that literally chemically soothes their nervous system. The plant is actively comforting the person caring for it.
That is incredible. The garden is providing actual chemical therapy.
It really is. And then you have the daisy, Bellis perennis.
A classic.
Arguably one of the most recognizable flowers on the planet. It's often associated with childhood, with innocence, and with a kind of unshakable purity.
And they're tough as nails.
Daisies are incredibly tough. They will grow in the cracks of a sidewalk if they have to. They are weeds in the absolute best sense of the word. Choosing a daisy feels perfect for a child, or for an adult who maintained a profoundly joyful, resilient, and uncomplicated spirit throughout their life.
That makes total sense. And finally, the sunflower.
Yes, helianthus. If the forget-me-not is quiet and subtle, the sunflower is the exact opposite.
Oh, completely.
It is bold, it is towering, and it is impossible to ignore. Sunflowers exhibit a biological behavior called heliotropism, meaning the flower heads actually track the movement of the sun across the sky throughout the day.
They literally chase the light.
They do. Symbolically, this represents intense loyalty, warmth, and a towering, vibrant personality. If you lose someone who is the loudest person in the room, the person who commanded attention and brought massive energy to every situation, a forget-me-not simply wouldn't capture their essence.
No, it wouldn't fit at all.
You need the towering yellow petals of a sunflower to accurately represent their spirit in the garden.
It's like you're casting an actor to play the role of your loved one in the ecosystem. You want the biology of the flower to reflect the psychology of the person.
That's exactly it.
And what makes this so vastly superior to a traditional monument is the relationship with time. I mean, think about a standard, polished granite headstone in a traditional cemetery.
Okay,
The day it is installed is the best it will ever look.
that's true.
From that day forward, it is in a constant state of decay. The rain erodes the letters, the lichen covers the stone, the ground shifts. It only degrades. But a memorial garden does the exact opposite.
It evolved.
It evolves, it grows. It's a living monument, shaped by time, shaped by the changing seasons, and most importantly, shaped by the ongoing care of the person left behind.
And that seasonal nature of these blooms completely rewires how we experience the anniversaries of a loss.
Tell me more about that.
Well, in the traditional model of grief, the anniversary of a death is often a date you just dread.
Oh, looms over you for weeks.
Right. You mark it on your calendar, and as the day approaches, you feel the weight of the sorrow compounding. It's a day focused entirely on the absence of the person. But when you have a living tribute, the earth itself becomes the calendar.
You don't have to look at an arbitrary date on a page.
Exactly. Spring arrives, the soil temperature begins to rise, the daylight hours extend, and suddenly there is an explosion of color in your backyard.
It's the earth saying, hey, we're still here. The memory is still alive.
Yes.
It completely shifts the emotional temperature of the anniversary. Instead of dreading a date on the calendar, you are actively anticipating a season. You're looking forward to the bloom. And looking forward is a fundamentally future-oriented emotion, whereas dreading an anniversary keeps you chained to the past.
It's a massive psychological shift.
But this brings me to a highly practical question, because we've explored the deep psychology, the eco-consciousness, and the botanical symbolism. But none of this matters if it doesn't function in the real, messy, complicated logistics of human lives.
Fair point.
How are people actually distributing these? Because the timeline of grief is long, and funerals take many different shapes.
The utility of the memorial seed packet is highly adaptable to the vast spectrum of modern mourning rituals. We're seeing them utilized not just at traditional, solemn funeral services held in a chapel, but across a really wide variety of gatherings.
Like what?
Well, they're distributed at more uplifting celebration of life ceremonies, which often occur weeks or even months after the death.
Okay.
They're handed out at intimate graveside committals where maybe only immediate family is present. They're placed at the tables during post-service memorial luncheons, acting as conversational centerpieces.
Oh, that's nice.
And increasingly, they're being sent out much later in the mail, marking 1 year, 5-year, or even 10-year anniversary remembrance events.
That range of events is critical to understand because the emotional temperature of a graveside committal is completely different from a one-year anniversary luncheon.
Radically different.
But before we look at the timing of that, I want to look at who is actually participating. One of the most compelling aspects of this practice is its ability to bridge massive generational gaps.
Oh, absolutely.
When you go to a traditional funeral, the rituals are almost entirely geared toward adults. Children are expected to sit quietly, to be seen and not heard, and they're largely excluded from the actual processing of the grief because they just don't have the emotional vocabulary for it.
It's very alienating for kids.
But a seed packet changes that dynamic entirely.
It creates a shared, accessible activity. Think about it. A 4-year-old child does not understand the finality of a casket.
No.
But they completely understand the mechanics of digging a hole in the dirt, dropping a seed in, and watering it. They can perform this action right alongside their 70-year-old grandfather.
It levels the playing field.
Yes. It doesn't require complex emotional articulation. It only requires a willingness to participate in a tactile task. This shared physical action strengthens the emotional connections among the grieving family members, giving them a mutual project of caretaking that spans across generations.
And it spans across geography, too.
Yes, that's huge.
This is the part that I find truly revolutionary. In our modern world, families are rarely concentrated in one single town. You have siblings, cousins, and lifelong friends scattered across the country, sometimes across the globe.
Everyone is spread out.
Right. So everyone flies in for the funeral, they spend 3 intense days together, and then they all fly back to their separate lives, taking their grief with them into isolation. But if everyone leaves that service with a packet of wildflower seeds, you fundamentally alter the geography of the memory.
You're creating a decentralized network of memory.
A decentralized network. I love that.
From a single point of profound loss, the funeral service you spawn dozens, perhaps hundreds, of geographically scattered living memorials. You might have a patch of daisies blooming in a window box in an apartment in Brooklyn, a row of sunflowers towering over a fence in suburban Texas, and a bed of forget-me-nots in a garden in Seattle.
All for the same person.
Exactly. They are existing in entirely different biomes, experiencing different weather patterns, but they are all inextricably connected by a shared grief and a shared remembrance of one individual. It's almost like a mycelial network of human connection, mapped across the country through living plants.
A mycelial network of human connection. That is a brilliant way to visualize it. You aren't forcing everyone to travel back to one static granite headstone in one specific cemetery in Ohio just to pay their respects. They have a piece of the monument right outside their own back door.
It's always accessible.
But I want to go back to the timing of the distribution, because handing someone this packet when the wound is fresh must have a completely different psychological impact than sending it to them a year later.
It serves two very different purposes.
Like, if I am standing at a graveside, literally staring down into the earth as a casket is lowered, the emotional atmosphere is one of raw, acute shock. The finality of death is literally staring me in the face.
Yes.
What does handing me a seed packet in that specific agonizing moment actually achieve?
In that moment of acute trauma, the seed packet acts as an immediate psychological life raft.
A life raft.
Yes. When you're standing at a graveside, the overwhelming sensory input is one of permanent loss. The earth is opening up to take something away from you. Handing a mourner a packet of seeds at that precise second offers a counterbalance to the despair.
It interrupts the darkness.
Exactly. It provides an immediate, actionable task rooted in hope. While they are witnessing a body being returned to the earth, you are simultaneously giving them the physical means to draw new life out of the earth. You're giving them a reason to wake up tomorrow. You're implicitly saying, I know the world feels like it has ended today, but tomorrow we need to plant these. Tomorrow, something needs our care. It provides a tiny physical anchor of hope when the psychological weight of the finality threatens to pull them under entirely.
It interrupts the free fall. It demands that there is a tomorrow.
Yes.
Now, contrast that with receiving a personalized seed packet in the mail with a beautifully handwritten card for a one-year anniversary.
Right. Totally different scenario.
By year one, that initial breathless shock of the funerals has usually subsided. The casseroles have stopped arriving, people have stopped calling to check in. The acute shock has been replaced by a deep, chronic, quiet ache, and often a terrifying fear that the person is simply being forgotten by the rest of the world.
That fear of forgetting is one of the most painful stages of long-term grief. Receiving the packet a year later serves a completely different but equally vital psychological function.
It tells you aren't crazy for still hurting.
Exactly. It acts as a gentle, undeniable reaffirmation of continued love and communal memory. It tells the mourner, we still remember them. We still value their impact on our lives, and we are still actively honoring their presence.
That's so validating.
Furthermore, planting the seeds at an anniversary provides a dedicated, quiet space for reflection. It validates the reality that grief does not magically disappear after 12 months.
Society expects us to be over it.
They really do. But grief simply evolves. It changes shape, just as a garden changes shape over the seasons. Tending to the new seedlings validates the long tail of grief, acknowledging that it is entirely healthy to still be tending to this memory, to still be doing the work of mourning.
It gives you permission to keep loving them out loud.
Yes, beautifully said.
It's a complete paradigm shift in how we approach the entire architecture of death care. We have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started by examining the deeply flawed nature of the traditional passive keepsakes, those laminated cards that get trapped in our desk drawers, and explored how the funeral program cites memorial seed packets shift the experience of grief from a state of passive endurance into an active, tactile practice of daily caretaking.
We unpack the profound psychology of the transitional object, too.
Right. Understanding that the beautiful, custom-designed packet, complete with photographs and meaningful poems, isn't meant to be preserved forever. It's meant to provide comfort in the sterile environment of the service, before being intentionally broken open in a necessary ritual of release.
And we also analyzed the critical biological and ecological mechanisms at play. We observed how these living tributes actively reject the toxic, carbon-heavy legacy of traditional burials, instead creating a positive environmental footprint.
Feeding the earth instead of poisoning it.
Exactly. By choosing resilient native wildflowers, mourners are physically weaving the memory of their loved one into the local biosphere. They're providing vital sustenance for endangered pollinators like bees and hummingbirds, and forcefully reminding the grieving mind of the vast interconnectedness of all life.
And we broke down the brilliant botanical symbolism, too. How the quiet intimacy of a low-growing forget-me-not, or the bold, sun-chasing loyalty of a massive sunflower, allows families to accurately cast the spirit of their loved one in the ecosystem.
It's so personalized.
We saw how the natural, biological rhythms of these plants transform the dreaded anniversary of a death into an anticipated season of blooming renewal. And finally, we looked at the real-world logistics.
You're right, exploring how the simple, intuitive act of planting a seed can bridge the gap between a 4-year-old child and a 70-year-old grandparent,
while simultaneously allowing a scattered family to construct a massive decentralized network of shared memory stretching across the entire country.
When you synthesize all of these elements, the grounding psychology, the ecological sustainability, the botanical symbolism, and the sociological connection, you realize that this isn't just a different way to say goodbye. It is a fundamentally healthier way to integrate profound loss into a continuing life.
It truly is. And so as we wrap up this deep dive today, I want to step back and speak directly to you, the listener.
Yeah.
I want you to look around your own life, at your own history of loss. Consider how you currently commemorate the massive milestones, the difficult transitions, and the inevitable absences in your own world. When you lose someone or something important, are you relying on rigid, static objects that ultimately end up hidden away in a box? Or are you finding ways to create living, breathing legacies?
It's an important question to ask ourselves.
It is. Because we are so deeply culturally conditioned to think of memory as something that must be locked down and preserved. We're taught that to make a memory real, it must be rigidly carved into cold, unyielding stone in a cemetery, or permanently printed on a stiff piece of paper and laminated in plastic. We try to build fortresses around our grief to protect it from time.
But time always wins.
It always does. So what if true remembrance isn't supposed to be frozen? What if the very act of trying to freeze a memory is what makes it feel so hollow? What if true remembrance is meant to be wild, untamed, spreading and changing shape year after year? Like the wildflowers themselves, perhaps the most authentic, most profound, and ultimately most healing way to keep a memory alive is to simply break open the envelope, plant it in the dirt, and let it continue to grow, to adapt, and to bloom long, long after the service has ended.